You're live, Your Worship.
All right, thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Thank you and welcome to all of our members of council who are joining us today and our members of our staff. This is a special council meeting of Clearview Township Council for August the 9th, 2021. And we're going to have a discussion here, just a couple of items in regards to the community halls that's on our agenda. I do want to acknowledge that Councillor Broderick is away and notified us some time ago that he would be away and missing this meeting. And Councillor Lamers has also sent in a notice that he is also away and will be missing this meeting as well. So we do have a quorum, and so we're going to continue with our meeting. And before we even start too on the attendance situation, Deputy Mayor Burton has indicated he needs to leave the meeting in about 45 minutes, but thank you, Deputy Mayor, for being here to start the meeting. All right, members of council, we will call the meeting and ask for item number 1 is the approval of the agenda. Recommendation be it resolved that council of the Township of Clearview hereby approve the agenda dated August the 9th, 2021 as presented. Can I have a mover and seconder on the motion for agenda? Mr. Walker, Ms. Thaneen, thank you very much. All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you very much. All right, item 2, disclosure of pecuniary interest. Anybody with a pecuniary interest in regards to the content of today's meeting? All right, nothing heard. If anything comes up, as per usual, please bring it forward. We'll deal with it directly at that time. Okay, so item number 3 is our community hall presentation. This again is our second meeting in regards to the community hall's presentations about Aoda renovations. And Mr. Vachon, our director of the Recreation, Culture, and Tourism Department, has several presentations for us, council. So today we're going to talk about these 2 presentations. So Mr. CAO, I see you're here with us as well, and we have a number of our staff available for other questions if necessary, including Tammy Gill, who is our representative on the Accessibility Advisory Committee. All right, so council, at this time I'm going to go to Terry and welcome Mr. Vachon. I'm going to pass the floor directly to you to begin your first presentation. Thanks, Terry.
Thank you, Your Worship. Can you hear me fine?
Yep, go ahead.
Excellent. So, hello, Your Worship and fellow council. So, like Mayor Measures has mentioned, this is meeting number 2 of 3. Today, we're going to be presenting the Sunnydale Hall as well as the Ottawa Hall. So, I will be presenting I will be making 2 presentations today. I will not be doing the recap like I did last time. We think that it should be fairly fresh in council's mind. The recap was just a one-shot deal the last meeting, but the next 2 meetings will not have the recap. So today I will just be presenting the 2 halls, and then hopefully we'll be able to present the last 2 halls, being the Duntroon Hall as well as the Dunedin Hall in the very, very near future. So without further ado, Your Worship, I'm going to share my screen. First one today will be the Sunnydale Hall. Sorry, let me just press the wrong button there. There we go. Can you see that, Your Worship? Excellent. Let me try I'm going to try the full screen today and see if hopefully I tweaked it properly. And we should be able to get a full screen here. Slideshow. Can you guys still see that? Full screen? Excellent. Perfect. We're going to get this again, Your Worship. So again, very same template as our 2 previous halls. Today we're going to be presenting the Sunnydale Hall. A resolution has been provided by the Sunnydale Community Center Hall Board. I will read it as follows. So it was a resolution that was moved by Ed Cullum, seconded by Marianne Bowie. Be it resolved that the Sunnydale Hall Board hereby approve moving forward with the modified or hybrid fads option and local contractors where possible, moving forward in the small halls renovation discussion with the township. Again, I've brought forward the same slide, same template from the brainstorming session, which lists all the recommended activities or renovations that should be done to the Sunnydale Hall. Again, the Sunnydale Hall is a little, is a little different. You will see on the top, there was already a design that was made with a corresponding price tag for the entrance project only. And then we added the remaining balance of the AODA renovations that are required to the building. So it's the only one that has it split in two like this. Again, the first amount for modified FADs of 450,000 are the all the other required renovations other than the entrance. And then the entrance portion is 210,000 for a total of approximately 666,000. Again, the options that were provided by council from the brainstorming sessions are listed at the top. You will recall that council provided two options to the Sunnydale Hall. The first one was implementing the modified FADs to the existing buildings for all the items. And the council also provided a contribution partnership of 75%, 25%, very similar to the other halls. So if we take that amount, including the kitchen renovations, it was a total of 728,000. Again, if you split that up, 75, 25, that's $446,000 for Clearview and 182,000 raised by the board. It was to, like I said, include the fire code renovations for the kitchen. They were also going to investigate installing a stair lift versus an LULA elevator. Again, it's note that this type of lift might not be all that useful because it's not universally accessible since it requires key operation or calling for someone for assistance. But this was something that the Sunnydale Hall board wanted to investigate. And there was also some concerns about the cost of the ongoing LULA elevator operations and what impact would that have on the Hall's, Sunnydale Hall's budget. A second option that was provided by council to the Sunnydale Hall was to sell the building to a new incorporated board. Again, sell the land in the building for $1. There would be some continued support from Clearview Township with respect to snow removal, some basic services, the cost of insurance, etc. There would have been a 12 to 24 month implementation timeframe. So once I met the Sunnydale Hall board, as mentioned in our previous meeting, they were very receptive to our presentation. They found it very educational. They really appreciated all the information we provided them and the position that council is in today. We presented these two options to the Hall board, and they came back to us being that they were not interested in purchasing the Hall as a new incorporated board. So they rejected that offer. And as per the resolution, the Sunnydale Hall board agreed in implementing modified FADs through the existing building. They were willing to work with the township towards a 75-25% cost sharing commitment. They've already put together a bit of a fundraising committee as part of the Hall, and they also have some money already set aside for these renovations. They would like to modify RJ Burnside's proposed modified FADs renovation items. Again, very similar like all the other halls. They want to go through a process to see if there's potential savings or potential tweaks to the list that they provided. And they also would like to include the kitchen upgrades to meet the existing fire code standards. Again, key notes for council to consider. The Sunnydale Hall has also expressed a ready-to-go direction, as stated by the Hall chair at the June 2nd meeting. Again, recommendations that no in-house renovations or donated material or services would be permitted under Clearview Township's procurement process and construction liability protocols. Clearview Township would hire the services of RJ Burnside engineering firm to manage the tender and construction process. Council would approve the final specifications and designs of the hall renovations, again, in consultation with the Sunnydale Hall board. Council, with the hired services of their engineers, will be responsible for ensuring all renovations are completed as per the approved specifications and designs. Council may or may not choose to postpone any decisions until they review all the individual hall reports. I think, Your Worship, somebody's microphone isn't muted. There you go. Sorry about that. And also, the Sunnydale Hall Board have requested that council use the services of local contractors. They have been fully explained, they have been explained Clearview Township's procurement process. So they're aware of how our procurement process works, but it is their request that we use local contractors. Some possible next steps for the Sunnydale Board Hall. Option 1 is to review Sunnydale Hall's list of modifications to the existing plan and investigate if any components can be implemented in the 2021 standards. Again, very similar to the other halls mentioned last week. It would cost approximately $5,000 to do so and approximately 3 months process. Option 2 is just to renovate the modified fads as per RG Burnside's list of renovations and estimated costs, include the kitchen and commercial fire renovations, and then return to council with final project specifications and estimated project costs, including the commercial kitchen and commercial fire standard renovations. Again, this process should take approximately 2 months. Again, option 3, very similar to all the other halls. Status quo is always an option and not do any renovations. Again, recommendation that we update the management agreement between Clearview Township and the Sunnydale Hall Board to include the renewed operations of the Sunnydale Hall, the financial commitment of the Sunnydale Hall Board with corresponding financing provisions, and clarify any outstanding misapprehensions in the existing agreement. As previously mentioned, the existing agreement is only one agreement for all 6 halls combined. These new agreements would have individual agreements per hall. We would also create a construction agreement with the Sunnydale Hall Board regarding the level of responsibilities and liabilities between both parties during the construction process. We would return to council with both final agreements above to be approved by council. And we estimate that process taking approximately 4 months. And again, the agreements could be done and cohesive with the working with RG Burnsides. Those are really 2 different things. Just to clarify, your worship, to council, that working with RG Burnsides and coming up with final renovations and estimated costs is separate from working and having new agreements with our hall boards. And finally, release a public tender for renovations of the Sunnydale Hall. And we estimate that those timelines being approximately 6 weeks. So that's all for my presentation for the Sunnydale Hall. Let me just stop sharing here. Again, your worship, open to any questions or comments from council. And again, we're hopefully we've explained it properly, and I'm open for questions.
Great, thanks very much, Terry. Appreciate that. And also appreciate the volunteers that serve on the Sunnydale Hall Board. They've certainly been minding this issue for some time now, including engaging RJ Burnside to do some preliminary work and so on. And that's good for them, because they've basically really taken a good look at what the requirements they see as volunteers are for that facility. So that's been good, and it's a really good relationship we have with them as a volunteer board. All right, I'll open the floor to any members of the council. Anybody would like to have any questions to Terry or staff? Hello, Mr. Walker. Good afternoon, sir. Go right ahead.
Thanks to Terry. Terry, with Burnsides do the summary or the review of things, will they be looking at the chairlift cost versus the elevator cost and the yearly maintenance cost? Will that be included in those? In that information for costing? I've been to a few spots that have chairlifts and have to be key operated, and to be honest with you, it's a nuisance. No matter what event you've got, somebody's got to be there to control that chairlift. You can't just give the key to the rental group, because you just can't do that. And I've also been to some elevators where they were totally key lift operated as well. So I'm just like to know the costing, so that when we do decide what to do, that we've got a bit of numbers in front of us to look at that balance of those costs of chairlift and elevator.
Go right ahead, Terry.
Yes, through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Walker, absolutely. It is our expectation that Burnside will do a thorough review of the chairlift style versus an elevator, and the cost to operate both. You have an excellent point with respect to what's the cost of not having a 100% accessible mechanism for our patrons to use. The intent of having an accessible building is that someone with accessibility needs does not need to rely on others to help them get from point A to point B. It's hard to put a cost on that, but it is something for the hall board as well as council to consider. But yes, to answer your question, Councillor Walker, it is our expectation to have a thorough dollar value with respect to the cost of both.
All right, thank you. Good question, Councillor Walker, and good perspective too from your point of view. Thank you. Members of council, anything further? Any other questions to Terry about the site? Yes, hello, Councillor Leishman.
Oh,
Connie.
excuse me, sorry. Yes, hi. Robert, we have talked to the board about this, and the board has discussed this, and we have no problem with someone on the board going there and being there for the event, helping the person that needs to go up to the whatever floor, and then coming back and helping them down. For the few times that we're going to be using this, because let's face it, and over the years that we've had no accessibility, we've maybe had 5 or 6 inquiries. That's about it. So I'm thinking that for us, and only having 2 levels, which aren't like, they're not going up 20 stairs or anything. It's only like a 4 to 6 stairs up and 4 to 6 stairs down. I don't see that the lift will be a problem. And it might eliminate one of the entrances. We might only need 1 entrance and 1 set of stairs. So that's sort of where we were going this, right, Terry? Sort of? Yeah, okay, good, yay.
Thank you, Councillor Leishman, for your perspective on that as well. Robert, did you want to jump in again?
Yeah, the other comment I want to make is that now's the time to decide when the build is on, whether we're going elevator or lift, because we can't decide after. If you put a lift in and decide then 3 years down the road that the board members, for example, don't want to go there anymore because they've changed, nobody wants to be there or whatever. So we have to, as a council, that's a decision that could be a tough call, because during the build is now when we got to decide which way to go. And that's the future of those halls. So we just got to be careful on what we decide. And I hope, we can decide on the right way. That's all.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Terry, do you want to comment about the projected maintenance between the LULA lift versus a elevator lift? I do know that elevators do require semi-annual or every 6-month inspection. Is that correct, Terry?
That is correct, Your Worship. Yeah, the elevators have a very stringent license process with TSSA. I'm not familiar exactly with all the details that are involved in those inspections, but yes, you have to hire an outside contractor to come and do semi-annual inspections. Sometimes even getting those inspectors on site are quite challenging, and those costs are very, very high. Unfortunately, the demand is there. There's only so many companies that do those inspections, so there is a cost for sure.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Anybody else who'd like to comment or question? Hello, Tom. Councillor Patterson, nice to see you.
Yeah, we do have experience. I'm not sure anywhere else in the township, but the Creemore Medical Center has a chairlift.
Yes.
Have any recent comments? While I was on the board, we didn't have any problems other than just learning how to operate it. But when it was ongoing, I didn't hear anything. Barry, you were on the board for a while. Is there anything that we can learn from that experience?
Well, I agree with Rob. Yes, it did become a problem because it had to be somebody who was trained to use the lift. And so somebody had to be, especially when somebody came in the lower part, they had to notify somebody in one of the office below to call the reception upstairs for them to come and bring the key. And if they happen to be busy with a patient or something. So it really did become, I mean, it's not used often, but it was it had its problems. It's like Robert said, it can have its problems. I would definitely support going to an elevator. I think that's the better solution. Because then you're not depending on, there's not just somebody with a key. It has to be somebody who's trained to use it. And the liability factor becomes, if somebody has a key and says, oh, I know how to do that, and they do it and they're not trained properly, then you have an accident, you know, somebody rolls off with the wheelchair or something. I don't know. I just, that was sort of the comments that were made at some of the meetings that we had.
Thank you for that. Back to Councillor Leishman. Connie?
Thank you. I think there's just as many problems with the elevators because I've seen them use the one at United Church and it's not easy. Unless you get the door exactly right, unless you get all the locks and things done exactly right, it won't move. And we've had to have people come in and be there for events. So I don't think there's much different between that and the other, except the cost. That's my concern.
Well, I think if I may, Your Worship, I think the best thing is let's see the reports from Burnside and see what their recommendations are, and let's look at the actual cost differences. I don't think we can make that decision today. I think we need to see those costs and what the benefit, pros and cons of each are.
I think that's a fair statement, Deputy Mayor. And further, perhaps we can go through the CAO and our staff to investigate TSSA. And I'm not sure if we do any inspections with TSSA on those devices right now, and whether they're even involved in the lift at the medical center, as Councillor Patterson has mentioned. Does TSSA inspect that one regularly too? I'm not aware. I don't know. It's since we don't have a board operating the medical center right now, we don't really get an update on activities there that much. But Mr. Vachon, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. The Creemore Medical Center actually reports to my department. I'm the lead contact for that building. So whenever there's any renovations or anything that has to be done there, it goes through me. The lift does get inspected, but not by TSSA. It's not the same process. We do get the company that sold us the chairlift back in the day. They do come and do their annual maintenance inspection, I guess you can call it, on an annual basis, just to make sure they do some tests and make sure it's good. But you don't need like a TSSA ticket to operate a lift. An elevator, however, you do need a TSSA stamp ticket to be able to operate an elevator. So there is a bit of a different process there, but both are reviewed annually.
All right. Well, thank you for that, Terry. And I forgive me, I had slipped my mind that you were looking after that. I know that our previous CIO, Mr. Sage, he was very much involved with the medical center operations. And to be honest, I haven't heard about it for more than a year now, so I haven't really been paying attention. Thank you very much for clarifying that. Okay, anybody else with any questions or comments about the Sunnydale presentation as we've heard? Yes, Councillor Leishman.
Sorry, don't mean to talk too much.
Jump in anytime.
Okay. Terry, I think it would be, and council, I think it would be wise to combine option 1 and 2, like we did for the other hall. That way we'll get all the answers that we want, especially about the lift. And I do believe that Sunnydale is anxious about that. I really don't see this happening right away. So I think Sunnydale will probably start renting out the hall again, at least for people that have no mobility issues right now. So yes, I would like to combine option 1 and 2, and you can strike out option 3.
All right. I'll go to Councillor Patterson. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, just review our policy. I, in a broad sense, I understand not having non-tendered donation services and materials. However, is that door completely shut? I mean, let's take the easier example. If someone who was actually putting in a tender included an amount of work that was going to do at no charge, we would accept that, would we not?
Good question to Mr. CAO and Mr. Vachon. Mr. Vachon put his hand up first. Go ahead, Terry.
Through you, Your Worship, if I understand the question correctly, through you, Councillor Patterson, If a contractor, as part of their tender, would would accept or allow donated materials or donated service, and they be held legally liable for those services and those parts or whatnot, then that would be acceptable if council accepts that tender. But we can't do it vice versa. We cannot put it on them that they have to accept donated material or donated services, because they will ultimately be responsible for that work. So we can't force it on them, but they can, if that's part of their tender document and council's comfortable with that, then it can be done, but it has to come from them. And in our experience, you don't see that too often. Most contractors want to use their suppliers. They want to use their professionals to do the work, and they don't rely too often on volunteers or other companies. But it is somewhat open, but it has to come from them.
Go ahead, Tom.
Just to follow up, I'm sure I don't want to get into hypothetical cases, but the case I'm thinking of is that completely separate, maybe, for example, for the lift or the chairlift, where we don't go to tender because someone came with a generous donation. And it's a reputable company, manufacturer. We go through the usual vetting. Is that a possible scenario?
I'm going to go to Mr. CAO Ferguson. John?
It's a great question. Some communities have a gift guide program. They follow a process. They have policies in place and how they receive gifts. I'm not sure if we have anything in place here in Clearview Township or not, but we might have something partially in that area. So gift giving is something a municipality can absolutely receive. Ultimately, on the tender process, if basically what you're saying, if somebody submitted a bid and their price was lower, could they get the bid? If their price is lower, they have to meet all specifications. So if they meet all specifications in their tender process and their price is lower, then they would have a good chance at, depending on how it's scored, picking that tender up. So both can take place. I'm just not so sure how far down the road Clearview Township is with the gift guide program, for example.
Yeah, if I may, that's one scenario where the tender includes a gift, and of course, all things equal, he gets awarded. The other scenario I'm thinking of is oftentimes you'll see this in a lot of public sector work. Oftentimes somebody wants to put a name to it, like a hospital wing or an X-ray machine. But in our case, if someone was to donate, or even a group, like a community group wanted to donate the lift or the elevator, so completely separate from the tendering process, I don't see why we wouldn't. In fact, we've done that, haven't we, with Rotary Park? They built the gazebo and Memorial Park.
Yeah, the Kinsman Park.
Kinsman, sorry.
Yeah, just thinking Rotary, I don't remember that. But anyway, Kinsman for sure. And actually, that's a really good example, because we have a good relationship with them, and they work with the Recreation Department, and they met all the building code requirements and offered the gift, and the township received it. So we do have a bit of a policy, CAO Ferguson. Yeah, certainly, I would encourage you to discuss that with the senior managers, and if you guys need to have it, reassessed, bring it back to council, and we'll help you with that. Sounds great.
Yeah, I figured you would have one. I'm just not sure how detailed it is. The one thing you have to be careful of is that the gift not be perceived as a way of getting the contract as well. So you got to be careful and make sure that's very clear.
Yeah.
And most importantly, when you go out and there could be another bid that doesn't give a gift, but it might be lower than the one that does give the gift. You don't know in a tendering process how that'll unfold. So it's something I would suggest we proceed with caution.
Excellent. Let's go to Terry. Terry, you want to jump in?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So 2 points. So just to Councillor Patterson, I had to go back in my memory a little bit on the Kingston Park Pavilion project. And actually, we did not receive a gift for that one. The Kingsman Park took out their own building permit and built their own building. And actually, Clearview Township donated or gave $10,000 towards the cost to them. So we didn't actually build that. They built that themselves. So we didn't receive a gift from the Kingsman, just to help clarify that. And on your second point, and perhaps just maybe just a clarification question. When you say accept a donation, when you say accept the lift or the elevator, do you mean cash in kind, or do you mean like somebody actually goes and buys the elevator or the lift and brings it to the Sunnydale Hall and somebody installs it for them? Just trying to clarify and understand what your point was there, Councillor Patterson.
Let's go back to Mr. Patterson.
Well, that's another scenario where the cash would come in and it would be subject to our some generous benefactor would come in and say, I want to pay for the lift. Tell me how much it's going to be. We go through all the work. We take it out of the tender, or forget the tender. We go through all the work, come up with the final cost, and say this is how much the full cost of the elevator would be, and he writes a check. And then we proceed, go to tender. That money goes towards that's a monetary gift. That's a directed monetary gift. And I suppose we should think about that too, whether or not there would be any possibility in the fundraising to incent things that people might want to to pay for themselves, including maybe having a nameplate. I don't know if we do that anymore. Provincial government is frowning on naming public buildings and by the donor's name, so I don't know how that's come down to the municipal government. No, the other way is a company just doing, or a group, just wanting to do, give back to the community, donates it, and then subject to all the vetting that we would do in terms of the contract. And the work is done as on a separate contract, paid for by the donor's money, or the company is what I'm saying. Could be the donor's money, as you point out, Terry, or the company itself donating.
The other aspect is they do get a certified tax receipt that they can use with Revenue Canada.
Yeah.
And in some cases, that's can be like real money to a company if they have capital gains that they want to offset by making a donation, for example.
I guess the only point I'm making is it sounds like we are open if it works for us and it meets all our tendering processes and so that if we're trying to get not just money to pay for it, but true community involvement. And that's kind of what I hear from Sunnydale when they say they want the local contractors to be involved. They want the community to build it. And that's a good thing. But, anyway, that'll come if we're open to it, and we can say yay or nay based on the terms.
We're already there, Tom. I think that makes sense, and I'm sure that council and staff will bring that type of information forward to a council decision. So that's good. Is there anybody else? I'm aware that the Deputy Mayor Burton will be leaving the meeting shortly, so I wasn't sure if there's anything more we wanted to discuss. I'd like to go back to Councillor Leishman. Councillor Leishman, you made a recommendation on option 1 and 2, but I didn't hear you say the word motion, or I didn't hear the word amendment, so I carried on the conversation. So I'm looking if there is anything that's in there, just as a reminder.
Thank you. Yes, I would like to make a motion that we incorporate option 1 and 2 and combine them.
Okay, we have a motion then. Thank you, Councillor Leishman. Looking for a seconder. Is that Councillor Deneen? Thank you for that, Councillor Deneen. Is there any questions on this motion and any clarification from Terry in regards to combining option 1 and 2 in your recommendations? Terry?
Thank you, Your Worship. No concerns from my perspective. I was very consistent with the other 2 halls that the council has already put motions through. So this adds a 3rd one to the list. I'm very comfortable with that, and I'd be happy to bring back a lot of good information for council to help them to continue to make some good decisions.
Correct. Yes. And hello there, Madam Clerk. I'll get to you in 1 second. The intent, of course, of this motion, much like the other motions we made at the other meeting, are that it does open up the opportunity for staff to engage the professional services and engage the funding that's needed to engage those services. And so those finances will come from our reserve account, which is what we've been talking about here all along, our reserve account for AODA small hall renovations. So Madam Clerk, I don't know if you need that in the motion. Your deputy clerk perhaps helped us out with that at the last meeting. So Sasha, is there something you want to help clarify there?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I would just like to clarify with Councillor Leishman. So the motion on the table that I have is that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby approve moving forward with options 1 and 2 combined as outlined in the presentation for the Sunnydale Hall. And like Mayor Measures mentioned there, we can add a second paragraph to that motion, and that it be funded from the existing hall's renovation reserve, which has been proposed for the evening hall at your last meeting.
That makes sense. Everybody, thumbs up from the mover, seconder, good to go. Okay, any questions on the motion as you've got it on the floor? All right, Council, you've heard the motion and a good discussion. I'm prepared to call the motion. All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Clerk, for your assistance there. Thank you, Ms. Leishman. Now, Council, is there anything further? Yes, Deputy Mayor Burton, go ahead.
Yes, I'm leaving the meeting now, Your Worship. My apologies to everybody, but I have a medical appointment to attend.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Good luck, and we'll talk to you later on. Bye now. Councilor Leishman, go ahead.
I would just like to thank council for moving forward on this. Sunnydale's been waiting a long time to get the shovel in the ground, so this is the best step so far. So
Well, we've got lots of steps ahead of us, Connie, but it's a good forward step for sure. Thank you very much. All right, Terry, you have another report to bring forward to us, unless there's anything further on Sunnydale. Okay, seeing no other comments, Terry, let's move on to Ottawa Memorial Community Center.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to share my screen. Put this on from the beginning. I'm a little bit more organized this time. So Ottawa Memorial Community Center, it's going to be a little bit, you're going to see it's going to be a little bit different than the previous 3 halls that we've presented. Should generate some discussion from council. So the resolution that you see in front of you is moved by Calvin Phillips, seconded by Jordy, I hope I'm saying it right, Lako. Be it resolved that the Ottawa Hall Board hereby direct council and staff to move forward with a decision without direction from the board, as the board is not willing to finance the proposed 25%. Moving forward, again, very similar to the 3 previous presentations, Your Worship and Council, a list of all the estimates that Burnside had put in place, the 2019 estimates, as well as current 2021, and a list of all the additions that would have to be done to the Ottawa Community Center. Again, I think very similar to the Sunnydale Hall, there's a proposed elevator as well in this list. Again, just to refresh council's memory, 3 options were provided from council to the Ottawa Hall Board. The first option was to demolish and build a new building on site. Again, with the 75-25% request from council from their commitment. Again, you see the costs associated to that option in front of you. There was also proposed possible breakout rooms and build it to full FAD standards as a brand new building. And that was also noted that maybe it might be cheaper to operate a new building versus an older building and have some energy efficiencies and elevators and other renovations as an example. The second option that was provided to the Ottawa Hall Board was to implement the modified FADs through the existing building. Again, the same 75-25% commitment ratio. And again, that was to include the fire renovations, kitchen fire code renovations to the hall as well. And the third option, very similar to the previous halls, it was to sell the building to a new incorporated board for $1. So the Ottawa Hall Board have gotten back to us. They're not interested and also rejected purchasing the hall and or creating a new incorporated board. They were also the Hall Board recommended moving forward without direction from the Hall Board, and also no financials or fundraising commitment would be provided from the Hall Board. And that was for both either to demolish a new building and build a new one, and of course to implement modified FADs. So the Hall Board in essence is saying, council, it's up to you. they don't want to fundraise or not, do not want to have a commitment to fundraise at this time. So if council wants to do the renovations, either demolish or build a new building or implement full fads, it would be at 100% cost to Clearview Township and its taxpayers. Some keynotes to consider. The Ottawa Hall Board has expressed that they do not want to fundraise any funds for renovations to the existing hall. Also, the Ottawa Hall Board attempted to conduct an effort engaging community feedback, and the turnout wasn't favorable. The hall chair notified Clearview Township at the chair's meeting of the community's lack of support, for lack of a better word, and the funding to commit to an additional debt load for the Ottawa Memorial Community Center. The Ottawa Hall Board also would continue to manage and operate a community hall and remain on as a board if asked to continue to do so by council. So they're not bailing. They would be willing to continue to manage a hall if council so choose. Again, very similar, no in-house renovations or donated material or services would be permitted under Clearview Township's procurement process and construction liability protocols. Clearview Township would hire the services of RG Burnside engineering firm to manage the tenders and construction. Council would approve the final specs and the designs of the hall renovations in consultation with the Ottawa Hall Board. Council, with the hired services of their engineers, would be responsible for ensuring all renovations are completed as per the approved specs and designs. Council may or may not choose to postpone any decisions until they review all the individual hall board reports, all 6 halls. And it's also worth noting that the Ottawa Hall Board have requested that council use the services of a local contractors as well. And they also have explained the Clearview Township's procurement process. Some possible next steps, it would be option 1 would be to renovate the modified fads as per RG Burnside's list of renovations and estimated costs, include the kitchen commercial fire renovations, and there would obviously be no fundraising or financial commitment from the Ottawa Hall Board required. And so staff would return to council with final projection specifications on whichever option council so chooses. It could be the modified fads, or obviously there's still the, oh, sorry, it's option 3. I'll get to that in a second. So option 2, there's another option would be if council so chooses, it could sell the Ottawa Hall and the land to the public and reinvest the funds in recreation and culture in Ottawa, or put the funds towards renovations of other community halls. An option 3, again, an option that was provided to the hall board, is to demolish and perhaps rebuild a new building as per council's option. And of course, option 4 is status quo, don't do any renovations. Again, very similar to the other boards, would be to update the management agreement between Clearview Township and the Ottawa Hall Board. Would also create a construction agreement with the Ottawa Hall Board regarding the level of responsibilities and liabilities between both parties during the construction phase. Obviously return to council with both of those final agreements for council to approve. And finally, release a public tender for renovations of the Ottawa Hall, either a new built or a modified fads. So like I said, Your Worship, a little bit different from the other 3. That's all I have for this presentation here. I'll stop sharing my screen. And again, open to any questions or concerns that council may have.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Terry. I acknowledge Councillor Denis right away. I have been very interested in this report and council's deliberation on this topic, as I am, of course, a resident of Ottawa and know that hall pretty well. So I'm very interested to hear this conversation as well. I'm glad to have your report here in front of us, Terry. All right, Councillor Denis, you're up first. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through yourself to Terry, I'm curious to know what status quo until 2025 would look like. That's our deadline to have something up to snuff. What do we have to do between now and 2025 to continue status quo?
Good question, Terry.
Thank you, Your Worship, to Councillor Denis. I will do my best to try to answer that question. council is not obligated to do anything until at least 2025. If you recall the brainstorming sessions that we had and the recap that we went through, there was a lot of information that was presented with respect to the inflation aspect or effect on the halls. So I think one of the major items that council would have to consider would be, what would be the cost to renovate the hall, in 2025. We see the inflation going up today. We would, by waiting, you're obviously, waiting to see what that cost would be at that point in time. I think that would be probably the major effect would be the cost at a future point in time.
I guess what I'm asking, Terry, is to continue operations, do we have to we'd have to right now put in the fire standard renovations, like we'd have to invest the 20,000 right off the bat regardless. Other than that, it's pretty much just status quo? Or is there anything you can think of that would be, that we couldn't continue operation with right now?
Good question.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So for the first question, Councillor Deneen, to you is so it was highly recommended from staff that the kitchen renovations, the fire suppression system be installed for the kitchen to be a bona fide commercial kitchen. At some point in time, somebody from the fire department or the fire department people are going to come by and, if it's not deemed a bona fide commercial kitchen, it could be closed down and not be used as a bona fide commercial kitchen. So there's from that perspective, there is a chance that could happen. From a status quo perspective, like I said, we've been operating these halls now for 10, 15 years and them not being accessible. I think, again, part of the brainstorming session and again, part of the recap is, Clearview Council has expressed their need to want to provide accessibility to the public. And there's a need to provide accessibility to the Ottawa Hall. Many folks do not use some of our halls if they're not accessible. If 5 out of the 6 other halls are accessible, I would assume that folks that have accessibility needs are going to probably rent from the other halls first, as they're fully accessible. And so it comes just a matter of providing that service to the citizens of Clearview and providing the accessibility services to the citizens of Ottawa. If we're going to commit to having our public buildings fully accessible, especially by 2025, you're committing to the public that service. So by doing status quo, you're just not providing that service to them.
Thank you, Terry. I just wanted that clarified for everybody that might be watching us as well. So looking at the fact that demolish and new build is cheaper than modified fads, I'm going to listen and see what the rest of council has to say then. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Deneen. That item in the report also caught my attention for sure. So we'll perhaps discuss that a little later, but I'll give the pleasure to any other members of council who may have a question. Did I see a card? Oh, yes, I did. Hello, Councillor Patterson, go ahead.
Well, so just a question with regards to the need for the hall in Ottawa. I've always seen Ottawa as having a very strong identity to their town, notwithstanding their proximity to Collingwood. So I must say I'm a little surprised. So I want to understand the reason why they're saying this. Is it simply they don't have, as a board representing the community, they don't have the wherewithal to raise the money, but hope that it continues to exist? Or is option 2 something that might interest the community, where money better spent by the township in Ottawa might be in improved recreation facilities in the park? And I don't know if there's an equivalence there in terms of money and utility. Just trying to understand why, because does the board understand that there's a possibility that there won't be a hall? And would they support that or at least accept it? Or would they be concerned that that might be a consequence, that there would be no hall?
Tom, do you have somebody you're asking that question to, or is this a statement? Because
Well,
nobody from the hall board on here other than Phyllis Deneen.
there's two representatives.
As ex officio.
The two representatives, I think, could answer it, Phyllis and Doug.
Well, sure. I'll take the first stab at it and just say something about volunteerism, and that the volunteers that have been serving on the Ottawa Hall Board have been doing it, very faithfully, looking after the hall and meeting all the requirements that have been put upon them as volunteers to operate the facility. They've received some great support from our staff resources, both from Terry Vachon himself, as well as Amanda and other members of our staff that have been very supportive of their activities. The Ottawa Hall Board also has been very active in supporting the community's effort of the Small Hall Festival, and had some great success with it over the years. And they've also done some fundraising activities to help offset the cost of operating the hall. So I think it's important to note that managing the hall, from the volunteer perspective, they have been doing that job just like all the other volunteer hall boards do. They manage the expenses and look after the income and the expenses of hydro rates and so on, and they pay the bills. And so that's been working. I think what the volunteers are recognizing is that with the efforts that they've been making to do fundraising, the return on the fundraising is pretty difficult to try to set a goal of some 25%. So again, as you look at the numbers, you're looking at asking the hall board in Ottawa to raise and commit to raising almost $200,000 towards this renovation. Whereas I don't think they've raised $200,000 total fundraising in 20 years at that hall. So I don't know how this volunteer hall board feels specifically, because I was not engaged in that specific discussion, but I can appreciate their trepidation in making a decision to commit themselves and the board to this type of decision. So it goes back to the comment that I made at the beginning of our discussions in our previous meeting about the number 25 and how that 25% was put out there as a starting point. It is very negotiable and is something that all our members of our volunteer boards have heard that we can certainly work with that. We're just looking for some type of commitment as a council to know that there is some type of input coming from the local community, the local neighborhood that want to support those halls. And so to various levels across the township, we get various levels of support from different hall boards and different economic climates. So I want to give one further comment, then I'll defer to Councillor Deneen, and that is you mentioned the identity of Ottawa. Certainly Ottawa is, to the northwest of the community of Clearview. It is in close proximity to Collingwood. As a person who was a volunteer on that board, as a councillor, I was doing some of the bookings, and I can assure you that many, many, many rentals come from the Collingwood area. Not so many coming from the actual Ottawa or Clearview area. But the rentals that are being used, the people that are using and accessing it, are simply because the community of Collingwood, being so nearby, is a large population that doesn't have a community hall per se. I mean, they have the Royal Canadian Legion, they have the some of the various churches have little halls that are available in the churches, and then they have the Leisure Time Club, and so that's pretty much it. Or some of the hotel halls as well. And so the economics of renting a small community hall in Ottawa is really positive. Like, there's people that want to definitely do that, and so there is interest in it. It's just the results of the survey work that they did. They didn't receive a huge rush of people to participate in the survey, but they did get some answers. They just weren't a really large portion of the community that answered. So Hope that helps answer some of your comments, and I appreciate your comment about Ottawa being in close proximity to Collingwood. Councillor Deneen, would you like to pick up on that?
Sure. Thanks, Tom. Our board, and honestly, I've only been on it for 1 year, 4 months, and that's how many meetings, and we got maybe 2 or 3 in that were in person. They're a great bunch of young professionals. Having said that, they're young, they have families, they have jobs, they don't have the time to commit to something of this monumental. If you can remember, I helped out with the scrap donation bin. It was very successful. They would do anything you ask them to do, but they do not have the time to commit to that, is what I can see. I agree with Mayor Measures. We've lost our church halls. We've lost all our church halls but one in Ottawa now. There's no place for a bridal shower, a baby shower, if we can ever have these things again. There's nowhere that's small enough for things like that. Having said that, they would like some direction. Nobody wants to see it go by the wayside, but I can tell you right now, if we had a new small hall, that would be booked constantly in my estimation. And that's all I can say about it, just from my own experience. I know we've turned a lot of people down because we have had to do that in the last year. And I'm quite certain I've gone to yoga at the United Church. The United Church has just been sold. I've been to baby showers at the hall. I've been to birthday parties. We had my father's 80th birthday party there. My family had every Boxing Day booked there. That's all I can tell you about the hall. We love our hall, but we do need the accessibility. We do need something more manageable. And looking at the numbers, there's no way I would put more money into the poor old hall we have. That's my opinion as one person. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Patterson, for bringing up this good topic, and I appreciate Councillor Deneen's honesty in her answer. And it's true, her family did rent every Boxing Day. Good for them. Members of council, any questions or anything else you'd like to bring forward? Councillor Walker. Hello, Robert.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. This is going to be a hard call. I honestly think, though, we should, to be fair in our assessment of this hall, that we need to go ahead and do an option 1 estimated cost on renovations to make sure to see where that number lies versus new. As things change, we've done that to all the other halls, and I think to give ourselves, to be fair in assessment, that we need to look at that option of doing that, and then that sets us up to make a further decision on to move forward with the decision on the Ottawa Hall. I would feel comfortable with making that a motion that we go with option 1, because that gives us the final spec and estimated project cost of the renovated modified FADs. Then we can compare that to new and then move forward with our decisions.
Okay, I appreciate that. There's a motion. For discussion, I'll ask for it to be, yes, Terry, go ahead. I was just going to look for a seconder, but go ahead, Terry.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I apologize. I didn't want to cut any councillors off. I just wanted to add to Councillor Walker's comment is that the Ottawa Hall, because the hall board, they've basically, mentioned to council, it's up to you guys how you want to do it. They don't have any other additions that they want to do or anything they really want to change to the existing building. If we use Brentwood as an example, they want to perhaps add another washroom to the back. Evening wanted to look at the 2016 designs and see, if we can still use some of those. Sunnydale, they want to look at, using chair lifts versus elevators. The Ottawa Hall board hasn't provided any of that feedback. So to Councillor Walker's, point, I think if I'm thinking perhaps investigating the cost of a chairlift versus an elevator, very similar to Sunnydale Hall, would be one thing so that we can review. But I think the list that you have in front of you, the modified list, is pretty much close to what you're going to get, because they haven't requested any changes. Perhaps, your worship, he's been around, managing that hall for a long time. Maybe there are other things that could be explored as part of RG Burnside, but there's not that much to look into at this point. Just to add, your worship. All
right. Thank you, Terry, for the comment. I'm going to ask for a seconder. Councillor Deneen, go ahead.
I think what the hall board's concerned about as well, if I'm trying to speak for them, they're part of the modified fads don't even include some of the issues that our hall has right now, and things that we might have to look at in the future. I don't know. The option 1 doesn't include the option option 3, costing for option 3 though. Is that what, through yourself to Councillor Walker, is that what he's proposing? Because the demolish and build a new building was, there were 2 options in there as well. The existing size, a proposed size. We need to narrow it down just a little bit better, as opposed to just doing the pricing on the modified fads at this point. And that's what they're concerned about. They're concerned about future problems with the building itself. Thanks.
If I may, Councillor Walker, if you could reconsider your motion, and maybe we will be able to get a seconder. While you're doing that, Councillor Walker, I'll go to CIO Ferguson for a minute. Go ahead, John.
Thank you, Your Worship. It's an interesting scenario, and Ottawa is a unique one in the whole group of the halls. I think our resolution in principle allows us to move forward with this group. We don't need to make a decision right away. I think the investigations that you're talking about will need to take place. I think option 1, 2, or 3 is really going to rely on option 1 to give it a comparable. So I keep that in mind. And then option 4, the status quo, no renovations, that's basically a stop up and close, because you have to have the accessibility to the facility. If not, you can't operate it. And I think there's even fines, if I'm not mistaken, here in Ontario in that regard. So the 4th one is a bit of a, unless you want to stop it up and close it, I guess that would be where it is. But I think the community has an opportunity to benefit from this. When they spoke about including the kitchen, commercial, fire, and renovations, it tells me that they're seeing a use there, or they wouldn't want to have that renovated. And that does support community use and further participation. I'd like to talk to them more about that. But, communities, sometimes they change over time, and they may want a little bit of what this community hall offers, and maybe something a little different. We should have that discussion with them. And I think our original resolution allows us to do that. So I think the points being raised, you have to unpack that with the volunteers and to see what they're comfortable with and what we can afford to do.
Great. I appreciate that input there, Councillor CIO Ferguson. I'm listening to Councillor Deneen's comment there, Councillor Walker, and wondering if your motion should include option 1 and option 3, which then would be kind of similar to our decisions that we've been making on our other halls, which then would give direction to staff to come back with some real numbers that then we could consult with our engineers / architects. If we're building a new building, it might be an architect rather than an engineer. So maybe that gives the opportunity for the staff to access some reserve funding to be able to do that type of work. Councillor Walker.
Yes, Your Worship, but maybe the better way to go then compare 1 and 3, just to give us a good idea of what we're looking at as a cost for either or.
Okay.
So that our decision then can be made based on the community as well as costs.
Right. And it also gives an opportunity to consult with the hall boards and see if they have anything that's outstanding that they could contribute, particularly to option 3, a demolition and rebuild, and what that may look like. So, Tom, I saw your card for a moment there and it's gone again. Did you have something you want to add, Councillor Patterson? Sorry, I think you're muted. No, yes, no.
Yeah,
Yes.
I just thought, by listening to this conversation, which I agree the direction is going, they may be the inadvertent beneficiary of a design build across all our town halls if we went with one agreement. And, you know, they're not as concerned about the features on the building right now. They're looking for direction from council, and it might give them some options if what came out of our consideration of the program for all 6 is a standard build with extras, and maybe that would just fit the bill. So I'm just trying to think of that might give them a little bit more direction, since that maybe that group hasn't either heard the call for new things based on the fact that they're younger, or in terms of board experience. So
Sure.
they might be a beneficiary of our template small hall.
Yeah.
Plus.
For sure. You know, washrooms, kitchen area, stage of some type, you know, breakout room sort of feature. Exactly. Yeah. Okay, good. I'm going to just say we haven't actually got a motion going here yet, although Councillor Walker's really got a good one cooking. Phyllis Deneen, go ahead. Phyllis.
I just wanted to say thanks to Tom for that. If it is feasible, maybe there would be the effort or the wherewithal for the community to get behind it and fundraise. There's always that possibility if we have numbers, hard numbers, and something to look forward to, or something that people could get behind. And yeah, thanks, Tom. That's about where I'm at with that too. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Leishman?
Thank you. We're talking about a new building, maybe, possible. Okay. And if we stay in the same footprint, in the old building, there is not really a commercial kitchen. It's a wet bar, basically. Is it not? Like a bar kitchen?
Yeah, it's more of a bar kitchen than a kitchen, yeah.
Okay, is it possible that we could build the new building without a commercial kitchen, but with a proper wet bar, like we have at Sunnydale, that is actually like a tiny kitchen, but it's not meant for making meals, but it could be for parties. Sorry, what do you think?
It's certainly within the design of our halls, and to Councillor Patterson's point, sort of a template as to what the features are of a hall. The Sunnydale Hall, we've all been there. They have a beautiful kitchen downstairs, and they have a wonderful dry kitchen or a wet bar upstairs that can be used for food service if it's catered in. It's not meant for cooking, but it certainly does have refrigeration, and it's got a little fridge and sink and that type of thing, but it's not meant for food prep by any means. Although it does have electrical plugs, so you can, you know, plug in your crock pot that's got your chili in it, sort of thing. So it's you know, it does, you're right, it does have a good feature. So there's something for us to think about if we were looking at a future design for an ideal community hall in the future. So thank you for that, Councillor Leishman.
Well, can I continue?
Sure.
Thank you. So I would agree to option 1 and 3, because I would like to see what a new building would look like without a commercial kitchen, but we have all the fire things in that we're supposed to have, and everything is accessible. Because I'm not sure that we need a commercial kitchen just to be accessible. And if it's all on one floor, you're eliminating an elevator, you're eliminating a lift, you're eliminating stairs, period. Anyway, I would really like to see that option. So I would support a 1 and 3 combination.
Okay. We're getting some head nodding. I appreciate it. I'd like to go back to Councillor Walker. Councillor Walker, do you have a motion?
I would like to make a motion that we move forward with the Ottawa Hall in option 1 and option 3 for estimated costs to be brought back to council and the funds to be taken from the small halls reserve, I think is what we used before, for that cost.
Thank you. Councillor Leishman or Councillor Deneen, is you seconding? Okay, thank you very much. Madam Clerk, Sasha, did you record that so you're comfortable? Just want to make sure you hear it before I ask for debate.
Thank you, Mayor Measures. Through you to Councillor Walker. I just want to double check with the motion that Council of the Township of Clearview hereby approve moving forward with options 1 and 3 as outlined in the presentation for the Ottawa Hall to receive updated cost estimates, and that a further report be brought back to Council for discussion, and that it be funded from the existing Hall's renovation reserve.
Yes, that sounds right. Thank you.
All right, good. And members of council, any questions or any comments about the motion that's presented? Terry, did you want to jump in there? Go right ahead.
Your worship, and thank you very much. And again, we have no issues getting this information for council. I too am very interested to know what the cost of a new building is. Obviously, if you recall, the Duntroon Hall that's coming forward shortly, it was a similar option that was provided to them. But your worship, and I really don't want to be Debbie Downer here with this, but I really need to caution council to give this some thought. Obviously, you do not have to make decisions today. It's a decision that can be made in the future, but something for council to think about is you have a hall board that have expressed the unwillingness to fundraise a portion of the renovations, and they have that right to do so. Councillor Deneen has shared that perhaps some positive energy, maybe perhaps a new building might provide opportunity for some fundraising, maybe not by the hall board, but maybe by other organizations, close to Ottawa. But something for council to think about is, if there is no fundraising and there's no commitment from that side, you're going to have 5 other halls that might have the same expectation. And I just want to share that with council. You need to be aware of that. Sometimes we kind of lose sight of that kind of thing. And this whole process that we're doing in the last 4 months is to look at all 6 halls. Even though we're bringing the halls individually back, we have to look at them all together. It's a very tricky process, having them individualized, but pulling them all together. So it's just something for council to consider and to think about as we go through this process of gathering more information to help council make better decisions.
Okay, I appreciate that, Terry, and thank you for the general reminder about that. I appreciate that. And I would just like to point out that of the 4 presentations that you've given this council so far, this is the only one that has come forward with any type of opportunity for a whole new building. So given that Avening, Brentwood, and Sunnydale, the structures of their buildings are really confident that their community and their volunteers appreciate and love and appreciate those buildings. So I can see that there may be some concern for the Ottawa Memorial Community Center, and that's why that's on this presentation here today. So I get it. So I'm not, honestly, as an elected official, I'm not as concerned that people will be wanting us to backpedal and maybe replace the buildings altogether. But I think that we have to make reasoned decisions about where we spend the money on buildings that perhaps need to be replaced or better suited to replace them, given the costs. So it's a balanced decision. Mr. Ferguson, did you have your hand up? I thought I saw your hand.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I just, I think the resolution is where you're wanting to end up, and ultimately perhaps the community as well. But I was thinking the last part of option 2, it says put funds towards renovations of the other community halls. That may not be an immediate goal if you're trying to do something in that community. But the first part, as any part of moving forward, if there's an opportunity, for example, and this is just an example, if you were to sell the community hall and you had other municipal land in the vicinity, then you could draw revenue in and then use the other land if you're looking to build something new. So I would just ask that we be given a lot of flexibility on how we would come up with an arrangement, because municipalities have unique abilities that other corporations don't have. And we could maybe make it more economical if we had a little more flexibility with the first part of option 2. It may not even come into play, but I think you understand what I'm trying to say is that if you could sell that for a certain amount of money, we won't carry the demolition costs. And if we have another piece of property, we could put the money to build it on that if it got to that point, I guess is the point I'm trying to make.
I appreciate that, Mr. CAO. It's there's a lot of things we could spend money on in Ottawa. Councillor Deneen, I'm thinking of your pavilion that we want to build in Ottawa Ballpark one day. So there are a lot of things that we could do there. So thanks for that input. Councillor McKechnie, it's good to see your card. Go ahead, Doug.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just wondering, Terry, when are you going to be bringing the presentation for Dunedin and Duntroon to council? I'm wondering about deferring our decision on this until that meeting, because I have some thinking that I have to do, and I don't know if I'm in a position right now to make a decision. So when are you going to be bringing when are you going to be holding the next meeting?
Good question. Through the clerk and this, Mr. Vachon, what's your opportunity for our next meeting?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, we're waiting for the clerk's department and yourself and council to determine those dates. Those dates have not been set yet, Councillor McKechnie. Like I said in our previous meeting, I just received the resolutions last week from the 2 halls. So we're hoping in the very, very near future, but it's up to the clerk's department and mayor and council to determine. But there's no date set yet.
Ms. Clerk, I don't think we have had that discussion, have we, to set that date?
Thank you, Mayor Measures. Through you to council, no, we hadn't had the discussion yet to set that date. We're getting a little bit busier as we're moving through August, as we have some conferences next week and we have some special meetings already scheduled for the end of August, but we'll do our very best to get these ones scheduled because we know that we want to move forward on a lot of these projects.
Certainly. Councilor McKechnie, go ahead.
Could I put forward a motion that we defer this until we hold the Dunedin and Duntroon Hall meeting? I just
Sure.
I'd like to get more information. That's all. I
Fair
don't know
enough.
whether the rest of council support that, but just wondering if
Tell you what,
it's possible to delay.
Motion to defer put forward by Councillor McKechnie. Is there a seconder on the motion to defer? Not seeing a seconder, Councillor McKechnie. Thank you. Appreciate that. And to be fair, I understand, and I absolutely understand. And I think as Mr. Vachon pointed out to us just a moment ago, we have to consider all of these and how they're impacting the entire community. And this is a hint to the CAO and to our treasurer, Kelly McDonald. I'm sure that as we come to the conclusion of the discussion, when we get to hall number 6 discussion, we're going to have a real debate and discussion about the funding of all these type of things. So just as a hint, that certainly should come at the end of our next meeting. There's my thought. Councillor McKechnie, you're comfortable then? Thank you. Okay. Anybody else got a motion on the floor for? Sorry, Doug, go ahead.
No, I was going to say I'm comfortable. That's the story of my life these days, so I'm comfortable with that. Yeah. Okay.
Great. It's August. What can I say?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, council, I believe, Madam Clerk, we got a motion on the floor, moved by Walker, seconded by Councillor Deneen, and you outlined it for us. Is there anything further from members of council on this discussion? All right, seeing none, I'm prepared to call the motion. Council, all those in favor? And are there any opposed? And that motion carries. Thank you very much. All right, members of council, thank you, Terry, for those great presentations. I do have a recommendation to read here at this time, which is the recommendation be it resolved, Council of the Township of Clearview hereby receive the Sunnydale Community Center and Ottawa Memorial Community Center presentations for information. This is just a formality to say that we have in fact received it. It becomes part of the official record. Mover and seconder on that motion. Deneen and Walker. Any questions on the motion to receive? All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. All right. Members of council, I don't think we have anything else for the agenda. See nothing further on the agenda. So I guess we can move right to our item 4, which is a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council meeting. Recommendation be it resolved that bylaw number 21-82, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the August 9, 2021 council meeting, be presented and read a first, second, and third time, finally passed on the 9th day of August, 2021. Mover and seconder on the bylaw. Councillor Leishman. Councillor Deneen, thank you. Councillor, you heard the bylaw. All those in favor? And the bylaw carries. Thank you. So, council, on that motion to adjourn, I have nothing to announce or talk about other than I just want to acknowledge that today is the 9th, which is recognized in Canada as Peacekeeper Day. Actually, it's recognized around the world by the United Nations as Peacekeeper Day. And certainly want to acknowledge and thank all the peacekeepers that have worked and served our country overseas as well as right here at home. And thank you for their effort and their commitment. Motion to adjourn. Recommendation be it resolved that council meeting be adjourned at 3:24 p.m. Can I have a mover and seconder on the adjournment? Oops, sorry. You wanted to speak, Councillor Leishman, before I go ahead. Councillor Leishman.
Thank you. Never mind. I can't remember what it was I was going to say. Sorry.
That's okay. Again, it's August, isn't it? I motion to adjourn for the 3:24, and I'll look for a mover and seconder, please. Councillor Deneen. Seconder, Councillor McKechnie. Thank you very much. All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you, council. Thank you, staff, for joining us. And thank you, Madam